Namaste and greetings everyone. Thank you everyone for joining in this second session titled Nepal's LDC Graduation Plans and Provincial Competitiveness. This session is pretty interesting in the sense that in the previous session we heard from the government stakeholders how they perceive LDC graduation and Nepal's strategy. With respect to this session, we are joined by our esteemed panelists from international organizations like Asian Development Bank and from Embassy, Swiss Embassy, also the international organization, labor organization ILO, and from the private sector Coca-Cola. So, given this context, it would be interesting to hear from the international organization, development partners, and also private sector how they perceive this LDC graduation transition. So, just to give you a context of official development assistance in Nepal, so it has been an important component in Nepal's development journey for over 70 years, and the aid has significantly had positive impact in terms of infrastructures or different social programs in education and health sector. So it is clear that ODA has played a pivotal role in Nepal's development landscape, but at the same time, if we see the trend of aid to GDP ratio, it has been declining over the years, especially if you take the data of like 2021-22, it's just 4.4%. So now we know the trend is that given the evolving global political landscape, the aid will be decreasing, especially post-LDC graduation, right? So, with this context in sight, I'm very excited to start this session where each of our panelists will share their insights on how their organizations are contributing to Nepal's transition out of LDC status and also enhancing provincial competitiveness. So let's begin our discussion with the first set of questions. So my humble request to all our panelists, so I'll be just asking two major questions, and I would request you to complete your answer within the 5 minutes. That would be good, and we can end the session on time. So with this backdrop, I would like to pose my first question to Ian Hansen, who is representing Asian Development Bank. So, Ian, as Nepal's LDC graduation will alter the financial landscape, right? Especially if we see the terms of international loans and grants, it might definitely decrease or post LDC graduation, and it's been very important for all our development projects. So could you please share from the ADB's perspective what are the anticipated financial challenges for Nepal post LDC graduation, and what measures can be taken to mitigate potential impacts on development financing?
All right. Thank you very much for this question. I think there are two dimensions. The first one would be the availability of development finance, concessional resources in particular. But the second question, the absorption or the utilization, is also very important. ILO has done a study. We have also done, of course, assessments, and the overall LDC graduation on access to and also the terms to development finance are not a critical factor because both for multilaterals and also for bilateral donors there are also some other factors which decide on the volume and on the terms of development finance. For example, for multilaterals, the access to grant financing, or say overall the access to financial concessional financing depends mainly on two variables. The first one is income per capita, and the second one is an assessment of creditworthiness. And the access to grants is usually among multilaterals under the leadership of IDA, World Bank IDA. Depends both on the two factors which I have mentioned and also on the level of debt distress. And because Nepal is, because of a long tradition of a prudent macroeconomic policy, is at low risk of debt distress, according to the debt sustainability analysis of World Bank and IMF, and by that not directly accessing grants, but rather concessional lending, and that is also applying to ADB. But as I mentioned, this is depending on other factors where graduation from LDC status is not directly impacting. Speaking on behalf of ADB, would be one, graduation from LDC status would be one of several factors which would decide on an assessment and potentially reclassification internally in ADB on eligibility for, say, less concessional finance, but it is only one of several factors which would impact creditworthiness, as I had mentioned earlier, which is the second criteria for availability for concessional financing. Speaking on behalf of ADB, graduation per se will not have an immediate impact on the availability in terms of concessional financing for Nepal. And I had mentioned earlier that grant accessibility is depending on other factors, but it could be one factor over the medium term, say over the next 3 to 5 years, which has impact on a multidimensional assessment. And secondly, I think maybe we get to that discussion also later in the panel. I think we also have to look into not only the supply of development finance, but also the ability to utilize it for investment projects, which basically means the absorption capacity of the government in particular, and that is usually impacted by capacity for project cycle management, including procurement, implementation of safeguards, contract management, and there are some challenges in having a speedy utilization of available development finance. So it's not always that the sheer availability or the supply of development finance is eventually deciding on the volume of transactions, but it is equally the demand side and the capacity to effectively utilize it.
Thank you, and that's perfect. I think you just made it on time. I didn't have to stop you. So moving forward, now we have the development partner representatives from Swiss Embassy. As we all know, Switzerland has a long-standing partnership with Nepal, especially supporting various development projects that align with Nepal's federal and provincial economic strategies. So my question to you is, can you please discuss the positive outcomes of Swiss support in provincial governance and economic development, particularly in enhancing competitiveness and local governance structures? Any development projects that Swiss government is supporting, or Swiss embassy is doing to support the provincial and local government structure, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As you mentioned, indeed, Switzerland has a long-standing cooperation with Nepal. It started almost 70 years ago, so we've been here for a long time. We've seen that country changing and changing fast. One of our priority in our country program is the building of a functioning federal state. And why is that? Why has Switzerland invested so much in supporting financially but also technically the building of a federal Nepali state? First, it's because we're convinced, and it was reminded to us again this year with the winners of the Nobel Prize for Economics, that you can't have a prosperous economy, you can't have sustainable growth if you don't have strong and resilient institutions. And by institutions, Switzerland itself, being a federalist country, we understand institutions at the three levels of governance. So local governments, provincial ones, and the federal ones. So since 2015, of course, with the entry in force of the new constitution of Nepal, one major focus of our country program has really been to support as best as can be the Nepali authorities to build, implement, and live through this federal system. So we have provided support in the policy space, in the legislative space, building capabilities at every level. Now, what are the achievements 10 years afterward? First, you have to remember, because sometimes I hear surprising things in Nepal, the federal state in Switzerland needed 150 years to really work out. And here we're talking about 10 years after the constitution entering into force. So, of course, you can't change everything in 10 years. So, we have seen achievements, but for some people, of course, change always comes too fast or too slow, depending on whom you speak. What we've seen in Koshi, nonetheless, because Koshi province is the focal area of the Swiss development program, is quite interesting and I would even say promising. We've seen, for example, the provincial authorities leading intergovernmental dialogues, such as, for example, in the risk disaster management. We have now 49 local governments that have a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with the province to try to collaborate at this level. And as you know, this is a crucial topic for Nepal. We also have seen the province setting up an aid portal. So what is it? We know there are several donors here in Nepal. And it is crucial that donors coordinate with one another, what we do with ADB, for example. But it is also crucial that in the field, in the provinces, the local governments and the provincial government work together and know what's happening. What is the neighboring municipality doing? Or if you're the Ministry of Industry, Agriculture and Cooperative, what is the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Planning doing? So all this information now has been centralized on this portal, and again, it fosters dialogue, it fosters coordination. In short, it makes for a more efficient work at provincial and again at local government level. So that's what we've been doing for the past 70 years, but again, reinforcing the focus on federalism for the past 10 years. It also aligns with the priorities of the government. Of course, we don't act in a vacuum. Switzerland wouldn't come and do something that is not aligned with the government of Nepal priorities. We're a bilateral donor. We work closely with our counterparts. So whatever we do, we cooperate, consult, get the approval of the Nepali authorities. And all in all, we are trying to adapt as best as we can to the changing context, also to the capacities of the treaties of government, and that's how we think we contribute to a prosperous Nepal, and we will support Nepal in remaining a resilient economy even after it has graduated from the LDC.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Cecile, for your insight on what Swiss Embassy has been doing Now let's move on to the private sector part. Thank you, Ji, for your participation in this panel. So now let us hear how private sector they are overseeing the LDC graduation. So in our perception survey, it has shown us that economic distress and there is high dissatisfaction among local businesses across the provinces, especially in Madhesh. So we would like to understand, given this context, how is Coca-Cola adopting its operational and investment strategies to address these challenges? Like if you could discuss some of the opportunities and obstacles that are presented by the current provincial government structure in tackling this issue. If you could share your perspective from especially from the private sector, that would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishal, and good evening and namaste, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Nepal and the organizing group for bringing in sort of a private sector perspective into this discussion as well. And I'm really honored to be part of this esteemed panel with all of you as well. I think before starting, I just want to preface by saying that even having the insights as we did from the National Competitive Index, I think it's extremely helpful, not just from a policy development and evidence-based policy point of view, but also for businesses as we look at where we can invest in the long term and in terms of business planning as well. I think I just also wanted to share that since I'm the lone voice for private sector, I wanted to share a little bit on behalf of Coca-Cola, but also a bit more on behalf of the manufacturing sector and the possibility it has, especially for Nepal and especially as we're thinking about graduating from LDC status as well. Coca-Cola, as well as some of you may know, we've been here in Nepal for about 50 years and we're a public listed company. We have 2 factories in the country, one in Balaju Industrial District and one in Bharatpur. No surprise that both of our industries are in Bagmati province, which the study also shows has a lot more economic density and activity as well. But the reach of our business, if you really look at it, is far more than just Bagmati province. We have more than 200 distributors across the country. We interact and engage with more than 1 lakh retailers across our value chain as well. So in its own way, we are actually interacting at a very local level across all the different provinces as well. And it's been interesting for me learning from this study that BEAD had also taken forward last year. They did a study along with the Nepal Food and Beverage Association, trying to understand really how has manufacturing evolved over the years, how has productivity changed over the years. And the food and beverage industry in Nepal, if you look at it, is actually employing more than 3 lakh people and is contributing right now to about 2% of Nepal's GDP. The reason I mention is that I think for the provinces to look at their competitive advantage, it would be important to understand and see which sectors are actually looking at investment, which sectors are actually looking at employment generation, which sectors are actually going beyond business and also contributing to the community at large, so that we, along with the government and with the development partners, can look at a positive development transformation for Nepal, right? So if you look at the last 40 years, Nepal has deindustrialized, I think we all know that, but it's very interesting that in the same time, the contribution of manufacturing has actually doubled. And within that, actually, the contribution of food and beverage has doubled. So this actually could be a critical pillar in really revitalizing the economy and generating more livelihoods as we think about the future as well for the country. For us, I think I just wanted to share a few challenges that we face. I think this is something everybody faces. Coca-Cola has been looking at a greenfield possibility, and a lot of our studies initially showed that Madhesh province was best positioned in terms of being able to facilitate the eastern side of Nepal. There's more density of consumers in the east, right? But it's been 4 years now, and we have not been able to get the land to invest in greenfield. Now, this is very difficult for us while we look at competitiveness and ease of doing business within provinces. I think we also have to keep in mind that we're competing against a very fast-growing neighboring country, India. And at the same time, India has built 10 facilities. And while we used to export to India, and that actually allowed Nepal to have a much more larger revenue, right now we've lost out on that opportunity as well. Second, as industry, we also need electricity, right? We need a continuous, supply of electricity, and we are actually very glad that Nepal has hydro. But at the same time, what we realize is that now we're again competing against either our neighbors where we have to export, or even within industries versus individual households. So I think it's a little bit more question of mindset as well, in terms of, do we want to prioritize productivity, or do we want to look at appeasing a larger population as well? For all of these, I think what we've tried to do really is that as being listed as a Nepali company, we've tried to continue to look at how we can procure more things locally. 5 years ago, we used to import sugar from India. Now we're 100% procuring everything in Nepal from Mohattari district in Sarlai, right, which is in the Madhesh province. So we are finding opportunities whether it's getting preform from Hetauda, Makwanpur, or whether it's actually procuring more things locally. We have the opportunity to build ancillary industry, but at the same time, the provinces also need to decide where they want to build out their competitive advantage as well. Just last thing I wanted to end with, which I found really interesting in your study, is that the study generally said that in terms of perceptions, more than 85% of the people surveyed did not view FDI positively, and maybe also viewed domestic investment coming from other places at like 50-55%, right? So I think that's the mindset that any business trying to enter Nepal, that's the mindset that we're working with. And so maybe instead of even looking at specific provinces, while there's larger commitments made at a national level and maybe micro commitments being made at a local level, I think the provinces really have a role to play in connecting the two and looking at how we can welcome private sector-led development, especially in light of the graduation.
Thank you, Snehaji, for your insight. I think, as we all know, there is a big commitment and disbursement gap when it comes to FDI. And with the new Fitch rating inside, Nepal obtained BB-, hopefully we'll get to invite more FDI in the days to come. But still, there is a huge gap between commitment and disbursement. And thank you for highlighting that. Now, moving on to I would like to pose my question for ILO representative Prakash Sarmaji. So, as Nepal progresses towards graduating from LDC status, right? I think there is also an urgent need to formalize the vast informal economy to ensure the equitable access to social protections and economic opportunities, particularly at the provincial level. So, could you please share us what strategy is ILO adopting or implementing to formalize Nepal's informal sectors, and how do these initiatives vary across different provinces to address the localized economic conditions?
Good afternoon again. Thank you, Nishalji, for your question. As probably you all know that ILO is a tripartite organization. We work with the government, employees and workers. So informality is, in this country for Nepal, is not normal. I'm saying it is not normal because it's huge. If you talk about jobs, we have more than 80% jobs are informal, and if you talk about businesses, almost half of the businesses are running informally. So if you sum up with the jobs and businesses in the informal sector, that accounts around 38% of the economy of the country. If you bring any policy, any plan for leaving 38% of the segment of the population, probably your plan and programs are not able to cover all segments of the population. That's why it is really, really abnormal. So informality is really a big challenge for the country. So as ILO, as a technical agency, we work very closely with the government, with the Ministry of Labor and Employment. So basically, the Ministry of Labor and Employment has developed the framework for formalizing informal sectors, particularly workers' side. So we are providing technical assistance to the ministry and the social partners for formalizing jobs and employment. Similarly, we also work with the workers because most of the workers' union in the country are covering formal and informal sector. Although they are basically concentrated in a formal sector, we are encouraging them to go into the informal sector and get more and more representation of the workers, so that more workers are to be united and covered under the formalization sector. Similarly, with the business case, we are also working with the Ministry of Industry and some Department of Industries to formalize small enterprises. Because of the process that we go for formalization, there are a lot of conversion, and this is one of the biggest reasons why businesses and people are working informally. So our idea is to bring them in a formal sector, providing some social security and also some incentive for formalization, both for workers and employers. If, as we are talking about graduation of LDC category, if we are not able to bring them in social protection system, in a government tax, in a policy making process, we are not able to count their economy. Take for one very simple example, if we build our house privately, we build very informal way. There are so many business and economic transactions made in this country in an informal manner. So this informality is really difficult for the country for planning and bringing policies for the government. And even in the earthquake is a very big example. There was so much of destruction in hotels and so many business establishments, and even if government is able to provide some incentive, we are not able to find the companies because they are running informally. There are so many consequences, not only for taxation and the social protection mechanism, but also providing incentive and other support, social support for the businesses and the workers. So this is why we are trying to bring workers and employers in formal sectors through different activities, like through training and capacity building, through registration, through bringing into social protection umbrella. These are the basic areas that we have been working with the government, with the employers, as well as with the workers for bringing them into the formal sectors.
Thank you, Prakash sir, for sharing your insights. Now I would like to move to representative from ADB, Ian Hansen. So there is a need for economic stability, right? As the development aid and development financing decreases over the time. So can you please say, like, how is ADB doing research, or how can Nepal enhance its macroeconomic frameworks to ensure that we utilize the available financial resources in the optimum way, and in what way is ADB assisting in Nepal during this LDC transition?
Thank you very much for this question. I guess there are two different components. The first one is more on macroeconomic stability, and the second one would be on utilization of available concessional funding for development. I would say when it comes to macroeconomic policy, Nepal has a long history of prudent fiscal and monetary policy, and that is clearly expressed, as I mentioned earlier, that the country has been classified at low risk of debt distress for more than 10 years. I would see the challenges for the Nepali economy more on the structural side, and that would be in terms of high, sustainable, inclusive growth, and especially employment creation. While Nepal is a world champion in poverty reduction, and economic growth has been very resilient over the past 30 years, despite a lot of volatility and also natural disasters. Growth is a bit less on average than in peer countries in the region or globally, and employment, according to some measures, is employment or the size of the labor force as a share of the population is low internationally, and according to some numbers, employment as a share of the population has been fallen, and of course that is also one or a main reason for out migration. So in terms of improving the economic outcome, further improving it over the medium and long term, the growth model of the economy should change a bit, more in the direction of, less in the direction of being consumption and remittance driven, but more driven by private sector development, enhancement in competitiveness, productivity gains, and quality job creation. And that is also the overarching main objective for our new strategy, country partnership strategy, which we launched in a short period of time. It will be over 5 years, and it is in close collaboration with the World Bank, where we try to focus our interventions on private sector development, on agriculture, of course, which is very labor intensive, on closing or narrowing the climate resilient infrastructure gap, on skills development, and on climate and disaster resilience, which is absolutely critical for the future of Nepal. That would be my first response to your question. Secondly, I think in terms of utilizing available development finance, and I'm not so sure if it would be radically lower over the medium term, and it would not be from ADB. Of course, over the very long term it will, but I think the absorption capacity, the capacity building for project cycle management is in the government, in all 3 tiers of government, and especially at the subnational level, which is now more engaged in investments, also supported by development partners, is very important. And both World Bank and ADB, we are offering, we are doing joint support for project portfolio improvement, for supporting implementation, the quality of implementation of our investments, and we are providing technical support, and we are working very closely and monitoring the performance of our portfolios together with the government. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for those insights. So now I would like to move to the Swiss Embassy representative. So recently we saw that, especially after Trump coming in US, they have massively reduced USA. Like even in Nepal, we have seen the impact, right? So now we would like to understand from the development partner perspective, like how is Swiss cooperation program adjusting its focus, especially when it comes to high unemployment and low labor productivity. Like, could you share what will be the key priority area for Swiss Embassy or Swiss cooperation program to deal with such pressing problems, especially post-graduation?
So, like we said, Switzerland has been in Nepal for a long time, and of course our country program has evolved, and we are now shifting from traditional aid to trade to support sustainable growth in Nepal, the creation of decent jobs, and long-lasting positive impact. So, what do we need in Nepal to make the economy more resilient and better adapted to the competition that was mentioned earlier. Our assumption, and it's also based on what we learned from the Swiss model, is that SMEs are the key. They are the backbone of the Nepali economy. And for SME to thrive, they need access to finance, they need business development services, and they need skills. So really, this is the focus of our economic development and cooperation program, private sector development activities. So this focus on SME. I told you earlier that the Koshi province was our geographical focus. Let me give you the example of one of our latest projects that we launched a couple of months ago in Koshi. It has two components that do reflect this changing condition and this adaptation. The first component is rather a classic one, but still useful. It's technical assistance facility for SMEs to help them strengthen their bankability. Meaning, we will select promising SME that have the potential to grow, to scale, and we will provide them with business development services so that the application for finance products is better received by the banks. On the other side, working on the supply part of the market, we are also setting up together with the government of Koshi the very first provincial guarantee scheme in Nepal that will be co-financed by Switzerland and the government of Koshi. And this mechanism will help de-risk transactions for commercial bank, what is called blended finance. So these two components together, one which is classic but again pretty efficient and targeted, and one which is quite new using a financial instrument, this is our approach. And again, we're not operating in a vacuum. We cooperate, align closely with the three tiers of government to ensure that our activities is aligned and that we don't disrupt or create alteration. Then comes LDC graduation. And we said, okay, we need a resilient economy, we need more trade, we need more sustainability. But there is another key to success that we again learned in Switzerland the hard way. It's innovation. So where do we see innovation potential in this country? The answer is quite easy. Look around yourself. You have a lot of innovation in the IT sector in Nepal. You have a lot of innovation also in the tourism sector when you know where to look at. So this is also what we're working on, supporting the authorities but also the private sector actors to be more innovative, find innovative solutions, tap on that potential. Because again, the private sector is part of the solution to make a much stronger Nepal. So we don't play the private against the public. On the contrary, we promote a public-private dialogue at every level, because it's together that they can make Nepal much stronger, irrespective of the very challenging context abroad.
Thank you, Cecile. I think provincial, guarantee schemes, that sounds like a really great concept. And in general, these credit guarantee schemes are very underutilized, not only in Nepal, but most of the developing countries. But I hope that provincial guarantees scheme will definitely help bring more SMEs into picture and help them to, support in terms of SME development. Now, moving on to the private sector, can you please share us, like, post-graduation, how is Bottlers Nepal Limited aligning its business and CSR activities or, strategies to support this transition? Also, if you could discuss the current and anticipated challenges that you see post-graduation, and if you could lay out specific plans your company is implementing or planning to implement post-graduation, that would be really great.
Thanks, Michelle. I think I'm really happy to hear from Cecile as well that, the vehicle to sort of sustain transformation and impact in private sector is one that even development sector and even sort of the diplomatic community is seeing as one that all of us have to collaborate. And really we're all here to support the government of Nepal in its broader ambition and goal as well towards the sustainable development goals. For us, I mentioned earlier as well as manufacturing, I think one of the major things we can do is ensure that we're investing in productivity and also, of course, generating employment. At the same time, when we look at the 1% CSR mandate that every manufacturing industry has, I think that in itself has the potential to go a long way. Somebody here also mentioned the importance of investing in SMEs. And if you look at a lot of the micro-entrepreneurs or even the smaller industries that are being developed down our value chain, from Coca-Cola, from a sustainability point of view and also a CSR point of view, we've really been working very closely with women entrepreneurs since 2012 now. And even now, we have this ambitious target of reaching out to more than 5,000 women retailers in our value chain by 2026. But what does that really mean, right? Where does that trickle down really happen when you look at empowering women? Is that actually we're trying to see if every woman who's running an END, or a grocery store, a kirana pasal or a khazagar, how could we empower that single woman who is then not only generating more income or income for her business, but then also able to invest that into better outcomes for her family. What we've seen is in the last year, we actually reached out to about 5 provinces, and even for us, it's actually hard to reach the far west province because of the lack of density of business, right? Even when we're trying to do training, we have to try and gather at least 50 to 100 businesses every time we do a training, and we've felt that challenge, but this year we're hoping that in 2025 we'll make it to Soderpocham and Karnali as well with that particular training. Then the other part is, again, as a business anchored in sustainability, we've been doing quite a bit of work on waste and waste management. And we, of course, do this with partnerships with different organizations, but in the process, we're looking at how we can generate more waste entrepreneurs. So currently, waste is being collected from more than 30 districts in Nepal, and we're looking at building these MRFs, which are material recovery facilities in Janakpur. In Bharatpur, we already have one. There's a PET recycling facility in Naulparasi, right? And even Bagmati has one already. What I'm trying to share here is that while it might look like from the outside that not much is happening, there's actually been a lot of economic activity that has also been benefiting the environment that's been taking place already. And I think when this happens, there's an opportunity also for government to maybe also create policies which incentivizes more businesses, not just us, not just the big businesses, but even the smaller businesses to think about more of what we can do in the triple bottom line really, right? So one part is looking at how we can make profit for our business, but it's also when you make that profit that you can reinvest that into doing something that's better for the society and the economy as well. So I see a lot of potential in how we can actually maybe create a basket fund of like all the CSR 1% that's coming in from different organizations. But at the same time, I think just to echo what Cecile says, I think public-private partnership, everybody coming together is most key in what happens post-graduation.
Thank you, Snazi, for your insight. I think definitely a public-private partnership would play a huge role. And usually when you hear about private sector, like especially companies like Coca-Cola, right? We only think about they are making this much of profit, but at the same time now, when we heard from her, like even with their like CSR activities, there are so many good things happening. For example, training women entrepreneurs or waste management, right? I think this is very important to understand and take into account both pictures. Now moving on to the last question for the session, and also I would like to ask audience to please prepare a question. I'll take 4 or 5 questions and end this session, just giving you all a heads up. So to Prakash sir, my question is like, as you know, like migrant labor plays a huge role in Nepal's economy, right? With a significant portion of working age population seeking employment abroad. So how do you see this migration as an issue, and what could be done to balance the mass migration of working age Nepalese and also the availability of skilled local professionals to manage the current and future economic or job opportunities across provinces in Nepal? If you could highlight this in context of LDC graduation, that would be really helpful.
Well, thank you again. Basically, as we know, we are witnesses that huge labor migration is happening in this country. I think there are two important aspects. The most important is the skill mismatching. So when we are interacting with the private sector partners, they are saying that we don't have appropriate workers, appropriate skilled workers in our companies. But in the other hand, if you go and talk to the young people, they are saying we don't have jobs. So I think there is a huge gap between education provider, vocational education provider, and job providers, because they are not working together to feed the job for young people. The other thing is the world of work is changing, as we know that because of technological transformation, environmental aspect, globalization. The world of work is changing, and we need to prepare for that, because as we say, we have new business coming up. For new business, we have new skills required and new learnings required. So we need to address those fundamental aspects in order to stop our retail migrant workers. But most importantly, and to be considered, is a decent work condition. Unless we are able to provide decent work condition for young people, we are not able to retain them in our country. What are they? The most importantly, we need minimum wage for the young people. We have been saying minimum wage, but I personally would like to highlight the maximum wage for young people. It has to be given to them. And for career path, for social protection coverage, for insurance, for career development, these incentives are to be there for young people to retain in our country. So for that reason, we have to work together for three labor market governance actors, with the government, with the employers, private sectors, and the workers' organizations should work hand in hand how to retain young people for Nepal's economic growth, for Nepal's progress. Actually, we are talking about post-graduation, but at the moment, I think let's focus on the transition period for graduation. Then we will definitely make a path for post-graduation. For workers, let's think about how we can offer decent work condition for them, wage, contract, career guidance, and also their productivity. For private sectors, definitely we have to think about how to grow businesses, as my colleagues already mentioned here. So business, unless and until business are grown, we are not able to provide employment. Often we talk about jobs and employment. Employment is the result of the businesses, the result of the successful businesses. Because if I am able to invest and if I am able to progress my business, then only I can offer jobs for my young people, for the young people of the country. But think about this ecosystem. And the government policies and programs should support for that, as earlier panel members also highlighted. Because these three things, the labor market governance with the workers, employers, and the trade union work together in order to make appropriate policies, in order to provide good jobs, decent jobs that we are saying, in order to provide business flourishing environment. Unless we are able to balance those tripartite mechanisms, we are not able to provide decent job. That means the migration and the decent job deficit are keeping going. For that reason, also let me highlight that ILO is working with the decent work country program with the help of different development partners for providing a skill set and also providing appropriate policy mechanism overall governing by labor market governance with the actors for migration as well as providing decent work conditions, particularly for lower segment of the population as well as women segment of the population, because they are very important. As we said, they are the one mostly going to be hit by graduation. Because of this practical aspect, we are trying to work basically around most promising business area to provide decent work conditions.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, and thank you to all of my panelists for answering the question within the time limit. I think this is truly a success for me as a moderator. Thank you for that. Now, in terms of questions, yeah, if my colleague can help with the questions, that would be really great. Or you can just raise the hand and I can randomly pick your questions.
Thank you, Yusalji. My question to Cecily. So, what are the GSEs and inclusion strategy that Swiss Embassy has been integrating to support Nepal's plan for graduation? Just inclusion and GSE strategy. Thank you.
GSE strategy, right?
Yeah,
I heard that correctly.
Yeah.
So you want to collect several questions or shall I answer?
Yeah, let's take 3 questions. Yeah.
Hi, this is Krishna and my question is to Cecily again. So I was very hooked with the wonderful work that the Embassy of Switzerland has been doing in Koshi province, and my question is related to the same area. So you did emphasize that you are facilitating a first province guarantee scheme. So I want to know more about it. So what is the modality of the scheme? So yeah, that is my question.
Thank you. My name is Shivraj. I just want to add something on Jan Hansen's observation. You said that LDC grading usually will not affect development financing in macro sense, but it all depends on availability will be there, but absorption capacity is in question. In previous session, still our former vice chair of Lumbini is here. He was saying that provinces are deprived. They don't have capacity. So he was raising that we should keep authority to provincial government so that they have some taxation authorities also. So what I was thinking that in one way Nepal is highly taxed incident country. Another way that we have financial resources but we are not able to use that. That's what I am understanding from you, that absorption capacity is very limited. Now, in the talk when Cecil was talking about that the creation of institution is very important, and 10 years is not enough for federal system. At least we have institutions. At least we have one level of or 3 levels of government. So those institutions, my one question is both of you that how they can help to raise the absorption capacity at the provincial and the local level. So is there anything they have to do additional in addition to what they are usually doing right now? The second question is any of the financial institutions like ADB and World Bank, they are able to direct loan agreement with any provincial government or local government? Is there any possibility you are discussing with the government? Because that question I think is missing, because one way we hearing that provincial government are not able to raise the resources they need. Other way, if they have that kind of possibility to directly do some agreement from your organization with the provincial government or some local government so that they can invest on their plan. Those are two.
Yeah, Cecil, you can.
Yes, so to start with the GSE strategy. So the Embassy of Switzerland has quite a strong GSE strategy. For each project we start, we do a GSE assessment. We have been doing really in-depth exercise in the past years, and we're integrating a JESI component all across the board. So we don't have one project, it's not project focused, it's all across the board in all our project and portfolio that we look for JESI criteria, JESI components. And we also walk the talk from our end, meaning we have a diversity policy at the embassy when we recruit staff or when we set up teams to implement projects. So it's not only singing the gospel, but also participating into it and implementing it ourselves. And again, we are convinced that only inclusive institutions, inclusive projects can contribute to a sustainable growth. That's for the JESI strategy. Second question on the provincial guarantee scheme. So I won't be able to give you all the details because we're currently designing the mechanism together with the province and the CGF. But the idea, and to come back to a comment Nishal made earlier, it's indeed to make the scheme as incentivizing as possible so that the bank use it without distorting the market. So it's really striking a fine balance to make a mechanism which is appealing, which is meaningful, again, without ending up in a situation where banks take too much risk and then grant loans to SMEs that aren't viable, aren't bankable. But the details will be known later on. We will launch the guarantee scheme hopefully by the end of March, and then you'll have all the details, but we're currently working on that.
Thank you for your question. Maybe I start with the second one. The development cooperation policy by the government is mandating that all development aid by multilaterals is going through the Ministry of Finance, and that is particularly the case for loans, which lending in most countries and repayment of the loan will be done by the Federal Ministry of Finance. But implementation of projects is in alignment with the federalism and devolution in the constitutions and related laws, that all projects by development partners will be implemented by the designated tier of the government. And they will be identified, they will be processed, prepared, and implemented with the designated subnational authority. And with regard to your first question, because of the increased devolution of public service deliveries and investment, the capacity of the subnational authorities has to be built, and that is one of the priorities of the development partners. We are usually mainstreaming that in our projects, that we have capacity building components, or we have special technical assistance to increase the capacity. But I would say in the long term, and that is the objective of federalism, is that service delivery will improve by allocating the function of delivering the services to those units who are closest to the consumer and to the beneficiary. I think that's also very important.
All right. Thank you to all of my panelists. With this, I think we are going to close the question and answer, and I'm sure we'll have more discussion while having dinner later on. Once again, thank you to all my panelists for your interesting insights, and we hope together with development partners, international organizations, multilateral institutions, and also from the private sector, we all can work together and definitely make this a smooth transition and contribute to Nepal's development. Thank you everyone, and thank you to all the audience for listening to this amazing set of panels.